ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Everybody, I on TV. Look, I on TV. Mom, guess what it is? That's me. Bartender, do you see me? I on television. I gotta tell my girlfriend I on television.
Hello?
Babe, turn your television to ZNS. Quick, I on television.
I don't have a TV in there.
We have Wi-Fi, though.
We have Wi-Fi.
That's fine. They upgrade now. You can watch it live from your phone. You just have to download the app.
All right, hold on.
Go to the App Store, type in ZNS, download the app, and you'll be able to watch ZNS straight from your phone. Hurry up and start over again.
Get your news and more anytime, anywhere with the new ZNS app. Stay connected from around the globe with our live stream news updates, all in the palm of your hand. You can also listen to the ZNS Radio Network for your favorite music. Go into your Apple or Google Play Store and download the ZNS app today.
Miss, I just stand now. I still gotta...
This is a ZNS News Update to the hour. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keisha Adderley. Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, says he has assumed the portfolio of Health Minister because of his familiarity with the position as a former Minister of Health. He took up the post after the resignation of Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands. He told ZNS News in an exclusive interview that he will wait until the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic is over before he makes a permanent appointment. He says he's looking at backbenchers and current members of the cabinet as he weighs his decision. Promotions on the Royal Bahamas Defense Force expected to be announced tomorrow. This after Raymond King was appointed Commodore during a brief ceremony at the Coral Harbor Base this morning. He succeeds Commander Tellis Bethel. And the Ministry of Health is due to hold a press conference at 5 o'clock this afternoon with the latest on the COVID-19 pandemic. The latest COVID-19 case was reported yesterday, the first in 7 days. This has been your ZNS News Update. I'm Keisha Adderley. Good afternoon.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
We must make sure that your mission is intact.
Yes, Mom!
Agent 1, what is the touch? Physical contact, Mom. Agent 2, what is a good touch? Touches that make you feel alright, Mom. Such as? A high five, a handshake, even a kiss, Mom. Good. Now, Agent 3, what is a bad touch? Touches that make you feel not so good, Mom. Like a slap, a kick, a pinch. And most important, if someone touches your private part. And what do we do when someone gives us a bad touch?
You tell a trusted adult, Mom.
For help, Mom. Tell them, don't do that, Mom. Agent, I see that you understand. Now it's your mission to spread this information. Just remember that good touches are okay. And bad touches are not okay. So, Agent, go spread the word. Yes, Mom.
Welcome to the special COVID-19 show coming to you live from Freeport, Grand Bahama. Today, we will take a look at COVID-19 and its impact on the country's job market. The virus changing life as we know it. Millions around the world have joined the unemployment line and resort to social assistance programs. The fallout already taking place here at home. Now, during this broadcast, we will hear from the Ministry of Labor and various unions in the country. Well, as it stands now, close to 30,000 persons have received unemployment assistance from the National Insurance Board amid the COVID-19 pandemic. But this number is expected to climb by week's end, as NIB will be making additional payments to 6,000 affected workers this week. NIB and Public Service Minister Brenzel Roll telling the media on Tuesday that applications to NIB show more than 30,000 people have been laid off or lost their income due to the virus and have been paid by NIB in their unemployment assistance and in the regular government program. About 7,000 plus have been paid out. He says it suggests that approximately 30,000 Bahamians are unemployed at this time, at this moment, and it comes at a time, and when it comes to the dollar amount being paid out. Now, they have also projected approximately $16 million a month more than what NIB normally pays. NIB has released a statement saying the agency has paid 32,000 applicants unemployment benefits and assistance. NIB said $28.7 million has been paid out to 26,185 claimants for COVID-19 related unemployment benefit payments, while $6.2 million has been paid to some 6,105 recipients for the government unemployment assistance program. And some of the layoffs here on Grand Bahama are taking place in the industrial sector. Equinor, South Riding Point, issuing a statement noting that as a result of ongoing challenges, management has been forced to reduce its workforce by 15 in Grand Bahama. Officials say that all of the required protocols have been addressed, noting that this is a tough situation for the company and employees, and they expect operations to resume sometime next year. The statement closes by stating that Equinor remains committed to doing business in the Bahamas and ever grateful for the invaluable contributions related to a dedicated and talented Bahamian team. Meantime, there is one company still standing strong in the industrial park, and while COVID-19 is having a serious impact on business, company officials say they are planning for the future. Italia Hall has more.
Polymers International produces polystyrene beads that are used to make styrofoam products like food containers, cups, and other plastic items. Chief Operating Officer Greg Ebelhair says business was impacted from January of this year due to the implementation of the plastic ban. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, he says business has suffered a further decline due to the factor that most of their customers are in the United States. He says the current situation is troubling because the company is unsure as to when it would all end.
I know there are 6 phases we're going through, but the timeline for those phases does not give industry a target to know where our exposure is.
But the good news is there's been no reduction in staff.
Everybody is being paid, but we've reduced how we, to maintain the social distancing. All of the administrative staff is working from home. Periodically, they have to run into their offices because we have to have access to files and for paying bills.
And as for the way forward, the COO says it is hard to plan because the way forward all depends on the government's decisions.
We would like to have some clarity because we want to know when we reach phase 5. At least targets. We're not going to hold anybody to anything specifically, but if it was if phase 2 was dependent on the dashboard having a certain number, then we know what we're looking for. We can always follow the dashboard. If phase 3 is looking at a certain number, then on the dashboard, then we know when we'll see phase 3.
Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Now let's bring in the Director of Labor, John Pinder, via Zoom to talk about the unemployment situation in the country and when we hope to see a turnaround. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties. We'll take a break and be right back in just a moment.
Freeport Gospel Chapel presents the Word
to the Point.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to The Point. I'm Carlton Smith.
This is your Morning Glory Show with your girl, the Divine Lady Vanessa Clark.
This is the Morning Report covering Grand Bahama, Bimini, Abaco, and the Berry Islands.
Radio 810 AM, celebrating 47 years of broadcasting in the Grand Bahama community and the Northern Bahamas.
The Ministry of Health is working to ensure the safety of the Bahamian people. Help us minimize the risk that coronavirus poses to citizens, residents, and visitors by following these 5 easy steps. Step 1. Wet your hands with clean water, apply soap and lather for 20 seconds by rubbing them together. Include the top of your hands between your fingers and under your fingernails. Rinse your hands under clean water, then dry them with a paper towel or air dry them. Remember to wash your hands before and after eating, preparing a meal, changing a diaper, or caring for the sick, and always after using the bathroom, touching money, shaking hands, or taking out the trash. Step 2. Cough and sneeze in your elbow or upper sleeve, not in your hands, not in the air. Or you can cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Put your used tissue in the trash bin when you're finished. Remember to wash your hands with soap and clean water after you cough or sneeze. Also, remember never to spit on the ground, roads, or in open spaces. Step 3. Ensure that raw meat is properly handled and cooked thoroughly. Step 4. Avoid sharing drinking glasses, eating utensils like spoons and forks, or sharing personal items such as toothbrushes and towels. Germs can live on surfaces we touch, so wipe and disinfect surfaces where germs can live, and keep your surroundings clean. Step 5. Avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. Should you or anyone you know feel that you have been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the surveillance unit of the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 502-4776, 502-4790, or 502-4737. We want Bahamians and those that live with and visit us to remain safe from the coronavirus. To do this, we need the help of each and every one of you to follow the simple steps we have shared. Let's stay safe, Bahamas.
President of the National Congress of Trade Union, Bernard Evans, is standing by. Let's bring him into the conversation. The NCTU includes BTC, ZNS, BUT, Airport Union, the Commercial Stores Union, as well as a number of other unions. Thank you so much, Bernard, for joining us today as we talk about the state of unemployment in this country amidst COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. To be a part of this August body. I see that we have Zane and Quentin, our lead man in the North Bahamas, and so you're going to get all the answers you need today. And not to forget Director of Labor, John Pinder.
Let's begin the conversation. You would have been quoted as saying divine intervention is needed for us at this time to counter this economic fallout as a result of COVID-19. We're in a very unprecedented position to date. What do you say about that and your thoughts surrounding that? Okay, we're having some trouble with Bernard. Quentin, LaRota, are you there?
Hello?
Hi, is that Quentin? How
Hello.
are you? You're up next. How are you doing today?
Good.
You would have heard the question that I posed to Bernard. He was quoted in one of the national dailies as saying divine intervention is needed to counter this economic fallout. What are your thoughts on that?
I support him in those sentiments. I believe from what we've experienced and now, those of us who know God and could pray, get on our knees. I think it's high time we seek his face in his throne and his intervention so that he can advise us, because we can't lean on our own understanding all the time, particularly with all of the changes and instructions and changes in analysis from the experts. I think it's time that we express the faith that we're grounded in and ask the Lord for some help.
And as the area vice president of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you guys have been facing as a result of COVID-19.
Well, I believe, obviously, the main challenge for the community of the Grand Bahama and the country as a whole is when the schools closed, the kids went home and their progress in education was challenged. And to mitigate against that, the ministry put an online forum in place where teachers could sign on and provide work for their students, and students who have the means to could also sign on. I know that many teachers are doing that from the level of the school and using their personal equipment and telephones to try to get things done. I know teachers who recorded themselves doing lessons, sent it to their administrations to put up in various sites. So we're trying to do the best that we can. Being faced with this, of course, is not ideal. I don't think anybody could have prepared for it. And so I'm going to criticize anybody because it's sort of catch the world off guard. And so everybody now have to do the best that they can do. What I am eager to see is the presentation on the budget, because that will let the country know, for those of us who represent workers in the public sector, exactly what the government is planning to do in terms of any austerity measures it may take, or any relief for the individuals in the country as well. And so that is what I'm eager to hear, because there are people who are concerned about cutbacks in the public sector, and so they're nervously awaiting that budget presentation.
And even now, a lot of parents are still placed in a precarious situation, as many of them say that they are still unclear as to where their children are supposed to log on, or if they're getting the classes and lessons as they should. What is going on with the virtual part of learning?
Well, the great challenge too is that not every student have the capacity to log on, because not all of them have the tablets or the laptops or the phones, and especially Grand Bahama and Abaco, which we didn't even start to put a dent in the damages from Dorian as yet, and many people lost everything, including their electronics. And so there are a lot of students who don't have the capacity to log on, and of course they are being left behind. I think that's something that the government has to target to try to get the numbers in. Those students who have the potential, the capacity to log on, and reach out to those that don't, and try to provide some assistance there. These things are not perfect. We're all trying to learn how to get on, how to log on, how to manage the system. There's some teachers who are doing little refresher courses in Zoom and these other things, trying to improve their abilities to deliver education. And so what I think the union and the ministry have to note the positive things that are being done and document it, so that we could know when we're facing a challenge like this in the future, that there's some best practices in place and that we can properly iron out the things. Now, I have a fear going forward as a unionist. We know that an expanse in technology always causes a loss in human jobs. And so I have a concern that after the experience the ministry would have gained from these online courses, may mitigate against them needing the amount of teachers. And that has been, in fact, I've expressed that from 2 years ago, because I anticipated this move towards technology and virtual classrooms. And so what we have to do as a union is to secure our members' employment. And as EI has pointed out, that there's no substitute for a teacher in a classroom interacting with students. And so while virtual learning is a substitute, the most ideal situation is the competent teacher in the room interacting with those students. And so the union has to promote that must continue to be the way our kids are educated, because it is the best way.
And you know, thousands of students would have been looking forward to graduating in June, and we haven't heard anything about that part of it as yet. Have you gotten any update on what the plans may be in terms of graduation exercises?
No, I haven't heard anything about education from the public, from graduations from the public school. I know one of the private schools has already informed the parents that they're doing virtual graduations. And so that may be the way they go. It is quite unfortunate, because you look forward to your kids graduating from the start grade 1, and students were eager, anticipating 2020 being the year for them to graduate, and now we're hit with this virus, and the response to it has mitigated against that happening. So I'm waiting to hear actually what the ministry's plans are with graduations, with definite plans on examinations and so forth, as to how we're going to address these things going forward.
And then when we look at it also, Lorota, from the student standpoint, thousands of students will be graduating, and there's really no place at this point for them to go, as we see we're hitting these high, unprecedented unemployment numbers.
Yeah, the job, the market for jobs is just shrunk. And so those individuals who are able to maintain employment are going to be the bedrock for their families, for food, for the basic necessities like paying the basic bills. And so how fast the economy turns around, I believe that there's going to be pent-up desire. Americans like to travel and move about. They don't like the cabin fever may set in, and there may be some pent-up desire to travel. And so our Ministry of Tourism have to take advantage of that. We also have to look at other areas in our country to boost our economy, maybe change our model a bit. Because what we're seeing is overnight, the number one industry shuts down for 2 or 3 months, and you are paying to find something else to lean on to. So perhaps looking at expanding more of our natural resources. There's a lot of talk about the aragonite and the potential that could do for the entire Bahamian economy. But we have to look at, we also need to invest a bit more in agriculture now, because the ability to at least feed yourself to some degree, every country needs to have that. And we've gotten accustomed to importing most of our food stuff from the U.S. and some other countries to the less extent. I think food security has to be a top priority for the country moving forward, because what we're seeing now, it's a reminder to us, also wake-up call, that, hey, you must be able to feed yourself. And if you can't do that, you're at the mercy of other countries.
And so we had agricultural programs in school. When I was in school, I remember taking agriculture from 7th through, I'm thinking 9th grade. But it was very minor stuff. Have we thought seriously about putting this into the curriculum where children or students can take this seriously as a career?
Well, I believe it's in the curriculum, and I believe the agribusiness part of it perhaps need to be more focused on. But what I think has to happen is we all, as a people, we take doctors and lawyers seriously, but we kind of look down at the farmers. And in times of crisis, when the rubber hits the road, a farmer becomes the most important person in the country because you need food. That's the basic. And so I think this is a wake-up call. And our mindset towards farming, I think it will change. But I think this pandemic has shown us that food security and the ability to feed yourself as a country is of the utmost importance. So I'm looking forward to, I think, the Ministry of Education and the government focus on pushing agriculture as a means, even if you're not doing it for export, at the very least, that you could feed your indigenous population.
Trifina Lewis, joining in on our Facebook page, says, hopefully when this is over, they upgrade the Bahamas learning system. This shows how behind we are. Do you think this epidemic exposed how far or our flaws in our educational system?
I don't know if I totally agree with that. I don't think we may not be where we should be, but we are not far behind other countries in the world. Usually when we compare education in the Bahamas, we compare it to the U.S. And so obviously we will always lose in that. They're a superpower. They have a lot of resources. They have the technology. But comparatively speaking, if you speak into other countries that are considered developing countries or third world countries, we are ahead of some of those. And in some instances, even with the U.S., with our unified, our curriculum, where all schools on all islands learn the same things. In the U.S., depending on which state or county you're in, different textbooks and different syllabi are approved. So there's some things that we're doing well in, and there's some things that we're falling back on. But with some of the education, there's always room for improvement. And like I said, they're engaged to virtual learning, and I believe that provides the impetus to now improve to the next step. But I would be remiss if I didn't say again that we don't want to totally go away from the interaction between the teacher and the students in the traditional classroom.
In the United States, a lot of states are saying that the students may not go back to the classroom setting until 2021, that they will continue virtual learning until the end of the year. Do you think that this is something that we may be looking at this point?
No, I don't actually think so. I checked today. The information keeps changing, and as you know, the experts made some projections that are being totally wrong. I just found out today that the concern about the transmission from surfaces is not as severe as once thought. You remember they were saying first there was no mask. The mask was actually a danger. Now without a mask, you're a terrorist. And so we have to look at be grounded and not follow the hysterics that I see being pushed. So I believe once we get a true sense of its transmission, one of the things we've also learned already is that children do pretty well with the virus. They don't transmit it. There was a study done in Germany where they didn't have one case of a student transmitting it to an adult, because that was the fear. That schools are germ factories actually, where you interact with all these students, interact with all types of different diseases, and it spreads. But that the shedding from young people is not as much as in older people, and young people do better with the virus. And so for us, we have to look at how best do we protect the adults in the school and create a system in place where their safety and their health is not compromised. And once you could secure the well-being of the adults, right? You're concerned with the children too, but in this particular case, adults do worse than children. And so once you have to use the science and respond adequately to the science and not the hysterics. And so if the science is telling you that the adults are more at risk than the students, then your safety concern about the school have to first focus on the adults and then say, okay, how can we execute schooling with the adults being safe? And then you filter in the children, and you also have to account for social distancing, because so far, social distancing is the one surefire thing that has mitigated against the spreading and has slowed it down. And so with social distancing, a safe environment, and some disinfecting of the schools, you may be able to go in September and start the normalization of education once again.
Sandy Bagel says the United States public schools were not very prepared for this either. Many flaws were discovered with their technology. Like the Bahamas, many teachers are using their personal technologies and other resources to meet the needs of their students. Our parents are complaining too. Joe Stiles says our educational system is broken. There are many kids who are left behind, and those are the kids who need the most attention. How do we make up for all of this lost time?
Well, that is a very good question. How do you make up? Because even what is being provided is not adequate, and then even that is not being able to be accessed by the students who don't have the technology. We've had storms before that we've had to make up for. We found the time with extra classes. The teachers have a way, if you put it in their hands, to come up with a solution to meet the needs of their kids. I like an approach where you say to the teachers, look, these kids have been left behind. What can you do? How can you advise us in getting to the next step, rather than someone who's not in the school, someone who's in the ministry somewhere, looking at it from the top down, trying to put their views on the system. And so I don't want to be that top-down individual to have all these suggestions about what should happen without the teachers themselves saying, this is how I can meet the needs of those students who were not able to log on, who didn't have the equipment that's necessary. And I think teachers always find a way. We've shown that Grand Bahama, after Francis and Jean, we were out of school for months. And when we came back, we put our shoulders to the wheel. We pushed, and our results were no different from the students from other islands that didn't go through that experience. And so I'm pretty confident that the teachers have the ability to do it. And with Grand Bahama and Abaco, it's even more so, because we had missed so many school time from Dorian, and now to be followed by this. So we almost have a year to catch up. And it's up to the educators to say, we have the ability to try and make up. And this is what we can do to facilitate it.
But of course, it's up to the parents as well. Shaw Reel on our Facebook page says, to add to this, parents need to be more involved in their children's education as well. A child's development is also determined by the home, which is so true.
Excellent. Well, the research has been showing that for some time. Every time the research is done, I'm aware of a study done in all CARICOM countries, where at the end of the day, the most important aspects in the child's education was their home life, and involved home life, and a competent teacher. So when teachers and parents work together, that's a recipe for success for the children.
And President of the National Congress of Trade Union, Bernard Evans, still standing by?
Yes, ma'am.
Bernard, as we would have spoken about before, you said divine intervention is needed to counter this economic fallout. Tell us your thoughts behind that statement.
I thought we were a Christian nation. So many people have asked me why I said that. But given the vulnerability of the Bahamas and where we're located and how we are susceptible to pretty much anything that happens globally and how it impacts us, two strongest, our economic pillars, as you know, is tourism and banking. And even if the Bahamas, in the best intentions, and the committee is working hard, but even if we have the green light all go, we still are depending on the wallets of the tourists to make sure that they come to the Bahamas so that people get back to work. And so it's not so much that we can do what we have to do and prepare and all that stuff, but still we are yet dependent on the tourists in North America and Canada, well, North America and elsewhere that they may come from. As for banking, as you know, we still have France and European Union, Moody, and Standard & Poor's. All these people still, given what we're going through now, still find it necessary to continuously downgrade us. It is a vicious cycle that we are in. And I don't want to pile on in a doomsday kind of thing, but yet again, we are in another hurricane season. God forbid. I've been watching on the television pretty much and looking at animations and stuff like that, as I have been always doing, and looking at potential storms that may come through the Bahamas. And there's at least 2 pegged to come through the Bahamas yet again. If we don't pray and ask God's assistance and guidance and blessing and what it is that we do, then I think we're in for a long haul. And that was the genesis of which I came and I said, you know, we need divine intervention in terms of us seeking God's help and lead not, like Quentin said, unto our own understanding, but to go and seek His help as best we can.
And, you know, as we look globally, you see these layoffs that have already taken place as a result of COVID-19, and we know about the imminent layoffs. Are you concerned at all for your union members that possible layoffs may come as a result of this global pandemic?
Absolutely, absolutely. I could give you a prime example. Again, even if if you look at the industries or the sectors that have been most impacted by this COVID-19, notwithstanding that there's a trickle-down effect to all spheres of our economic society. If, in fact, if the all-go is given, say, August 1st, for instance, that don't mean that the hotels, the Atlantises and the Bahamas would then be filled to capacity on August 1st. It's going to be a phased approach. I don't think we would get back to by December, maybe. This is already the slow month of the year when tourists are a little bit slow in the country. And so jobs will be impacted. The digital world have also exposed a way of doing business now that some employees may not see the need to bring back people. They have this curbside stuff, just online ordering and all that stuff. All these will have a domino effect where people can see that, well, employees can see that they can save money. BTC, for an example, we thought that they were going to have this teleworking or working from home just as a pilot to go through this phase of COVID-19. They are now suggesting that they're going to take it into maybe December and January 1st of 2021. They, I know, are recognizing a number of savings. They don't have to have a physical structure to house a lot of people. And so as bandwidth increase and capacity that people can have to work from home freely and execute. And by the way, from what I've understand, that productivity has gone up pretty much, where you don't have customer facing. And so all this, like Quentin said, will have a domino effect as technology increases, whether it's virtual learning or whether it's online shopping, way of doing business. It will have a physical impact on labor in the country. And so we have to be, go ahead.
No, it is interesting that you said productivity has gone up because there have been a number of studies, and even some companies here locally are saying with the employees at home, they didn't realize that productivity would have gone up. I have a sister who also works from home as a result of this pandemic, and so she's on her computer all hours at night, whereas if she would have been at work, she would be off at 5 o'clock. So, I mean, we see some good things coming out of this, I mean, for employers as well that they can take a look at.
Right, but it's also a threat to union as well. Now, we know that there's a savings and productivity is going up, but we know too that utility bills and the wear and tear for the person to work from home has also increased. As the summer months will come around now that I believe persons working from home will then have to keep the air conditioning on. They would have to deal with their children all day, and I guess the refrigerator door would be opening 10, 100 times more than it normally would. Water and the uses of water closets and what have you. But it also takes us out of the space that we're accustomed to and seeing our members every day, all day. And so that too may have a negative impact on how unions will have to now adapt to the new environment in which we work. And so we are very, very concerned, to go back to your original question. We are very, very concerned, but we, fortunately for us, Zoom meeting like this meeting here now. I've never had so many Zoom meetings. I'm meeting with people every day, one meeting a day from international people from around the world, including the United Nations, the ILO, and what have you. And so all of their recommendations as to what is best for island states like the Bahamas, what are the anticipation, what are the pitfalls, what we should look out for, and all that, what works and what doesn't work, commensurate to your country and what is necessary. So we have a lot to. This whole COVID-19 pandemic has really, really opened our eyes. And one thing I want to say, I listened to your show, I think a week ago, when you had the Honorable Minister for Agriculture, Pinder, on your show. He did talk about a number of plans that they have to introduce agriculture in the schools and what have you. But again, there has to be a paradigm shift in the way we think. And because today, I'm sending my child to school, I'm not thinking about sending my child to school to come out and pick up a cutlass or go in the fields and work. So somehow the narrative has to change so as to look at the farmer as just as important or more important than a lawyer or an accountant or whatever.
We also have Kirk Russell, a representative of the Bahamas Hotel Managerial Association. Talk about how concerned you guys are at this point.
Well, as it relates to COVID-19, there are concerns coming from the Trade Union Congress. Some of our things are not basically geared towards individual unions, but we have a lot of concern on issues that are impacting the workers nationally. You know, we are very concerned about insurance. Let me give you that. For instance, the TUC, it is the TUC opinion and belief that insurance ought to be a right and not a benefit to a few privileged workers. We believe that all workers in the country ought to be entitled to insurance. So that is one of the reset button we believe the country need to look at. We believe in all of these places of employment, there ought to be redundancy relief packages and systems where workers are able to get some type of monetary relief in the event of a disaster. We live in a hurricane zone, right? In the event of such a pandemic, you know? And so those are things that we ought to be concerned about for workers generally. The emergency funds, be concerned about the redundancy provision. We believe it is utter nonsense that if you work for a company for 12 years, the next person worked for the company for 30 years. At the end of the day, when redundancy comes, everybody takes home the same thing. Those things has to be revisited. Those things has to be looked at. Those things were some of the travesties from changing from the Fair Labor Standard Act, where those things where it stated that you got paid for your years of service. And when we changed in 2001, we seemingly put a cap on years of service as it relates to redundancy. We believe that those things ought to be revisited. I want to say something that is interesting. When you look in the Employment Act defines a week as 7 days. But when the worker applies for sick pay, the worker gets paid for 5. When the worker applies for vacation, the worker gets paid for 5. Those things must change because the act is clear. Don't get the work week. When you say you work for 5 days and 1 day and 2 days off, don't get that mixed up with what is classified as a week. A week is classified as 7 days. A next issue that we must remedy. A few years ago, I can't remember the exact year, but the law made provision for workers primarily in the tip category, Shashina, to pay national insurance on your gratuity up to a ceiling of, I think, $650. So the worker who makes the $210 a week, let me say the waitress, who makes the $210 a week basic pay, but makes $400 a week in gratuity, that worker pays the total amount to national insurance on that $400. That is not shared between the worker and the employer. The worker pays the full 9%. However, when the worker is sick, the worker is paid on the base pay $210. When the worker applies for vacation, the worker is paid on the base pay $210. When redundancy, the worker is paid on the $210. When the national insurance unemployment benefit kicks in, the worker is paid on $210. That is not fair and not right to the worker. So what you're telling the worker is, I am insuring your wage up to $650. But when it's time for the worker to benefit, the monies that the worker pays, contribute to national insurance to ensure his wage is disregarded, and only what is shared between the worker and the employer, the base pay, the worker receives benefit on. That must change immediately.
But with all of these unions in the country, and if this would have happened so many years ago, how is this being allowed at this point?
Well, you see, Shashina, let me say this, man. Most of the unions in this country are catching financial hell. And I tell you why. Because we are busy going to court with the government and employers on basic things that are legislated than dealing with grievances. And so I'll give you an example. You have a place like Bahama, thousands of employees. In that head of agreement, there was no provision for labor, for a trade union. And so those workers are left to the mercy of the employer. And so there is a great need, yes, for the unions and the government and employers, for the tripartite system to truly work. And that is one of the things that the unions, the workers are hoping for, that happens during this COVID-19 situation, where we have an opportunity to hit the reset buttons on these things and do what is fair and justified for workers throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Those are just some of the concerns that we have.
I want to bring in the Director of Labor, John Pinder, who is joining us via Zoom, so we can also talk about some of these situations as well as the unemployment situation, and when we hope to see a turnaround. Mr. Pinder, are you able to give us the latest figures as it relates to unemployment as a result of COVID-19?
Well, good afternoon. Now, let me say I am not the official voice for the unemployment statistics. You know, that's the Department of Statistics does that.
Yes.
But
are you able to give us any numbers?
I'm only able to give you some figures as relates to what have come to the Department of Labor as a result of persons being placed on layoff period, and in some cases some threatening termination, but not quite yet. They're waiting to see what will happen after the 12 weeks expire, the grace period expires, and then make them a termination. But again, we looked at numbers. Indirect jobs and direct jobs. As you know, Atlantis had to lay their staff off. That's like 6,600 persons. And they got but another 1,000 indirect jobs that persons depend on the Atlantis organization for. You got the Bahama, who has around 5,000 or so staff, and they got another 800 to 1,000 persons that depend on them. So let me add these numbers up with the large industries that depend on tourism. We know there's in advance of about 20 to 25,000 persons that have been infected in that industry. And when you add the other restaurants, and you add the straw vendors and the taxi drivers and ear braiders and beach vendors and all of those other category of workers, you're looking at 30 to 35,000 persons that have been impacted already.
Wow. Wow, and here on Grand Bahama, we have also seen some layoffs. We know that the shipyard has laid off last week. Are you able to give us any information on that?
Yeah, we got some correspondence from the shipyard saying that they laid some persons off. But again, that they didn't terminate. It's a layoff period. We're hoping that once the 12 weeks expires, that the economy would have started to rebound. Some business activities would have started to commence, and there can be maybe short wait weeks as relates to days persons work until such time as the organizations catch themselves again and they're able to get people back in full time rather than terminating.
And of course, this is an unprecedented situation that our country is faced with. What is your fear if this doesn't turn around soon?
It'll really be a disastrous situation for the Bahamas economy if we can't get the tourism sector back up and running. That's the bloodline of the economy. That's the #1 revenue source of this country, and that's our main industry. So everything around the Bahamas depends on tourism. Once the tourism dollar is coming in, things start to happen. If that doesn't happen, again, we've been talking about diversification of our economy for many years, from the Pinder administration. And there's been little done towards diversification of our economy. We still depend, again, largely on tourism. So I think the time has come for us to now tap into some more of our natural resources, not just the sunshine and the sea, but things that come out of the sea we need to expand on. Again, they talk about miles and miles of fishing ground that is untapped. A person don't fishing. We need to encourage our kids to look at the amount of money that is made from fishing, and encourage more Bahamians to get into fishing. Even farming. When we look at the amount of food that's important in our country, if we can just educate our kids on trying to grow only 2 of those crops, and they can very well do the statistics on the amount of money that is made from those, and encourage them to, get into the green aspect of the economy. I believe that could be the way forward for us, because we've been talking about trying to feed ourselves for many years, and that still has not happened yet. So it can't be business as usual. I mentioned this on several occasions, and I'll mention it again. Coming out of a conference in Ecuador, there's a conference in Ecuador, and all the emphasis during that conference was on the digital jobs, and they are saying that for the most part, there's only going to be 4 really categories of work going on in the future. They talk about the digital jobs, the blue jobs, the green jobs, and the care jobs. And so certainly nowadays we have to encourage our kids to stop thinking about just being a lawyer or an accountant or those big white-collar jobs, and steer them into those areas where once they go and get educated in them, they come back home and find employment, or they can find employment any part of the world if they get the right discipline.
And that is so true, because I always say I went off to school and I became a reporter, and that's something to be proud of. And here it is, I have a brother who didn't go off to school, and he's working in the industrial sector, making even 10, 15, maybe 20 times more than I am. So do you think it's a change of mindset that we need to come to realize and come to grips with, that, like you said, these white-collar jobs, the other jobs in other sectors can pay you just as much, if not more?
Yeah, for the most part, the baby boomers relive the lives that our parents wish they could have lived. There was talk about only white people could work in the banks, and only white people had certain jobs. And so our grandparents and parents who envy that type of behavior made sure they educated their kids and grandkids to try to take some of those jobs. And so we just start to think we needed to be an accountant to be heard or seen, or be a lawyer to be heard or seen, or be a doctor to be heard or seen. And so all those high-profile jobs, we had kind of persuaded our kids to be interested in, not knowing that you got to eat, your car's got to fix, you got to have a plumber, you got to have a carpenter, you got to have a mason. And so I believe the way forward also is to ensure that every student in the Bahamas coming out of high school have a trade, not just have academics.
Let's talk a little bit about the issuance of work permits, you know, especially at a time when jobs are already limited. Are we looking at how we will go forward in terms of the issuance of work permits?
I can only say the policy has not changed on the issuing of work permit. There's no legislation policy change, except to say that we in the Department of Labor encourage Bahamians who are looking for work to go to our job seekers website and register themselves, or come into one of the offices and register yourself, so that when an employer wishes to bring a foreign worker into our country, we can prove them that we have the skill set to meet their requirements right here at home. And that kind of lessened the opportunity for that employer to bring a foreign worker in. The next thing is, oftentimes, and you'll hear me say this, and I have to keep saying it because I think once they continue to say it, Bahamians would have a change of attitude. Oftentimes, they still beat us side of heads, especially the younger generation, for not giving a full day's work for full day's pay, and for not being disciplined enough to carry out a particular responsibility in a timely fashion. So we know Bahamians have the ability, but we lack stickability. And so I've been preaching as often as I can. We got to have stickability. We got to move away from thinking you only have one clear job description now, and we got to multitask in order to survive in the future.
And our Kirk Russell, who's here in studio with us, says not true. What do you disagree with?
I was very concerned about the point to cast a total umbrella over Bahamians' stickability and work ethics. When you look at the issue where we have one of our major challenges in this country, as relates to essential services, I'm speaking specifically to persons like the nurses. We have a shortfall of nurses. You know why we have a shortfall? Because the world, whether it's America, the Canadas, they realize that nurses coming out of this country are the best you could find in the world, and you would find that in almost every discipline that you have. One of the concerns I have concerning work permit is that over the years, we have been looking at it and following what has been happening in the country. Based on our unemployment statistics, I don't care what it is, where there have been 10,000, 20,000, we have always matched the unemployed Bahamians with the amount of work permit that is issued in this country. The last survey that was done, we had almost the exact amount of work permit out there that we had unemployment. And so what it appears to me as if the government, consecutive government, used the work permit situation as a revenue generating business. So they look at the amount of millions of dollars that are attached to work permits. I don't believe that a government could, if you take away all the work permits that are in the country, I don't have the exact number, right? Because I didn't come to discuss work permit. I would have bring the exact number. But if you look at the amount of millions of dollars associated with work permit, no government will give it up because the shortfall on revenue would be tremendous. And so when we attach prices to work permit, those costs will attach to act as a deterrent for work permit to ensure that Bahamians get the jobs. But when these work permits are issued in this country, unions are not notified. Unions are not a part of the process to ensure that if BHMA may not be able to find a person, but we could go to water and sewage. We may be able to go to BEC. We could network and find the Bahamian throughout this archipelago that can fill those jobs. But the government is not into that. It is a revenue generating source of income for the government, and that process has to change.
Pinder, what do you say about that?
I can only tell you this: the trade union movement is in a position to assist with that unemployment, because every person that is claiming or wish to request a labor certificate from the Labor Department that leads to a work permit has to produce what we call a notice of vacancy. They have to advertise that in the dailies for at least 3 days before they can come to the Labor Department and say they had no person. Now, here's what the labor trade union can do. When they see these jobs, and especially if it's a part of their craft, they can encourage qualified babies who they know, or seek to find qualified babies who they know, and encourage them to go get these interviews. Now, what we recognize, though, is that several times they advertise a job, and they put bad phone numbers that don't out of order. They don't really give you all the stipulations. They want you to go online and get some stuff or get further information. And then sometimes we recognize that even the qualifications that they ask for in these jobs were not actually necessary in some cases. What I'm trying to do now is cause there to be a more transparent way of ensuring that Bahamians are not disadvantaged through advertisement that's in the newspapers. So we now, in some requests for a labor certificate, persons are asked to name an understudy, or they will name an understudy. Let me just make sure I bear in mind too, though. There's a level of cross-training throughout the world will never stop. They always have the people you're on work with, just as Bahamians go other parts of the world and they cross-train or they get jobs other parts of the world. But what we try to do is to ensure that where a Bahamian is qualified and the employer is saying there's no qualified Bahamian, that Bahamian is given an opportunity to fill that vacancy. And so the trade union can assist by, when they see the ads in the newspaper, they can call. As a matter of fact, one or two would call and mention something to me if they know something is going wrong. And so sometimes I do hear from some trade union leaders or people who have been a part of the trade union movement, and they would give me certain tips, and I will look out for it, and we had some success as a result of that. So he can, as a trade union, get involved. You don't have to have them around the table. These things are advertised in the newspapers. They just need to have certain people paying attention to it.
What happens when you find that companies are not honest and not transparent and they put out these ads? Is there any repercussions or consequences for those companies?
I can only say, in my capacity as the Director of Labor, I can deny the labor certificate, but sometimes they have ways of circumventing the system by going directly to immigration and say, I'm only bringing the person in for a short term, and then they get a short-term work permit without having to come to the Department of Labor. And then sometimes they have an extension, and when they should come to the Labor Department in order to get that extension, sometimes, it's overlooked and they get stamp again. That's one concern we have. But another concern we have is also when the person who had applied for the employer to come in, sometimes they cause the salaries to look so small and unattractive, Bahamians aren't interested in carrying out that workload for the small salaries that are being offered. So there's a lot of things that prevents a Bahamian sometimes from being interested in getting the job. Okay? But again, we're trying to be transparent. When we find that a person does not meet the criteria, we can only ask for immigration to kind of cancel that work permit. We don't issue work permits at the Labor Department. So we know that there's several places in this country who will have a job description, a labor certificate that leads to a work permit saying they are a laborer or a helper or something like that. I mean, you find out they're cooking in somebody's kitchen, in some restaurant or the other, or they're doing something, they're waiting for Mary when the application says they're supposed to be waiting for Susan, and sometimes when you try to get tough on them, as you said, when they come back in for a renewal, you can challenge it, but if they meet the criteria for the renewal, only immigration has the power to deny those work permits.
It seems like these two bodies that should be working together, it's almost like the system is broken to a certain extent, and it's broken, and the way it is broken, I should say, disenfranchises Bahamians, if that's the case.
But to some extent, but again, it's our very own Bahamians who, for the most part, try to circumvent the system or try to say they can't find the skill set necessary. I had cases where contractors would come to me and say, listen, Pinder, I can't finish this job with Bahamians. I got to get me X amount of Haitians or Jamaicans or some other foreign worker in order to finish this, because they would say the Bahamians ain't disciplined enough for me to finish this in a timely manner. And then sometimes when they would prove to you, they would say, okay, let me show you something. Okay, my guys get paid Friday, and they give me the names of the places who get paid, and you would say, okay, yeah, I see that. And they say, now watch this when Monday comes. and guys are not show up to work on Monday, or they show up late, and then they show up to work on Tuesday, tell the boss, boy, I was supposed to bust up over the weekend, I couldn't even make it work Monday. And so sometimes the guy recognizing he have this deadline to me, he tried to persuade you to issue a labor certificate so he can get a work permit.
Benjamin Lightborn says the system is broken. Mario Curry says, why aren't these bodies, immigration and labor, working together? Is it because persons are being paid off? Jennifer Parker says, you're making sense on the subject of work permits, Mr. Russell. For years, the Bahamas government always stressed that the Bahamas doesn't have qualified persons for the jobs given to the foreigners, but never implement these subjects or technical classes to ensure that 10 to 20 years later, this is not our problem. And I completely agree with that, because I could remember even being to a ceremony before where it was said that expats will come in and they will train the Bahamians so that in 5 years we wouldn't need to bring in these types of people anymore. And then you turn around and the Bahamian people are not trained. They work under them, but the expats are allowed to continue working in areas that Bahamians should be skilled or trained enough to take on after 5, 10 years. Do you think we are doing due diligence to ourselves, Mr. Russell?
Absolutely not. We consistently ask the question, who are we building this country for? You know, and the question by the blogger is so correct. You know, in the law, it states that a work permit is only granted to a foreigner to train a Bahamian, right? But we have foreigners and workers coming into this country who work for years upon years, and those positions are advertised one time. After that, you know, you have to go way through these newspapers and stuff to look for that. Is that the relationship that the director is asking us to have? We should have a good tripartite relationship on this work permit situation, where immigration, whether it is the Department of Labor and the unions, collaborate on these things. We do our due diligence throughout the length and breadth of this country to find the qualified Bahamian to ensure that Bahamians get these jobs. But again, I contend that the revenue that is generated from work permit is the focus and not the Bahamian working. And also I just want to talk a little bit about job protection. You know, my colleague earlier, Brother Laroda, he spoke about the electronic working online and through the Zoom and these things. We don't have an issue with it, you know, but what we want to ensure, all right, as trade unionists, as persons protecting the workers of this country, are that we hit the reset button on outsourcing those type of jobs, whether it be the banks. You pick up the phone, you call the bank, you're somewhere in Cayman or Trinidad or somewhere else. Every time you call one of these commercial banks, you have these call centers, everyone out of the countries. We need to bring those jobs back home. So our job being diminishing as a result of electronics ain't just gonna happen, ain't just start because of COVID-19. These things have been happening over the years, and they have been allowed to happen. And so again, you need solid collaboration between the trade union movement and the government to protect jobs for Bahamians. See, this is not a time when you look at the Atlanta situation, man, you got my colleague Darren Woods and Catering Union cannot go on that property. This is the type of situation that unions are faced with. The director of labor or no one in that agency can tell you that for failure to negotiate, that anyone has been hauled before the courts by the Department of Labor. They have the power to do it within the law. But employers stall and refuse to negotiate, refuse to complete industrial agreement, and nothing happens to the employer. By God, let me see if I can help, because he gave me plenty, and before I forget, my memory is good. Let me correct him on my number thing before I forget. Okay, first of all, not every work permit calls for an understudy.
We have a shortage of nurses, so you'll have some foreign nurses. You have a shortage of medical technologists and shortage of certain skill sets, so you of course have to bring people in and tell Bahamians who go off to the university is trained and come back in. So not every one of them, not all of the work permits issued will call for an understudy. Secondly, there's some things he's saying needs to happen, but the union have to agitate for these things. The government ain't giving them no civil platter. You got to go to agitate. I know when I was president of BPSU, I discovered that we were paying on the minimum of the salary, and when workers from the government retired, they're getting less money than persons who didn't put a dime in the NIB. I had to agitate for the government to amend NIB because the public service to pay on the maximum of their salary and not the minimum. So they need to agitate for. Now, something he started to say, I wanted to intervene before he goes too far. All right. So as relates to what we're trying to do in the Labor Department to be more transparent and have more impulse on these work permits, it is before the Tripartite Council right now, where the Department of Labor has made some recommendations that we have the power to go in and cause a person who's supposed to be understudy to give us some report on whether or not they're receiving the training, and if the training is fit to them, if it's not being trained in such a way they can't catch it and that sort of thing. So what is happening right now, that is before the Tripartite Council. We didn't get the approval ever since they entered the Department of Labor. I've been trying to get that done. So at least if you tell me John Doe is understudying Mary Jane, I can ask you to give me a copy of the training programs. I can know in the first 3 months what Mary Jane should know from John Doe. That sort of thing. That's not happening. Those are some things that the union wishes to get involved in. They get involved in that sort of thing and ensure that at the end of the day, Bahamians are given a fair share or a fair shake. I don't know if it's fair to say that every issue could have been filled by a Bahamian, but I know for sure you'll always have cross-training, and I don't try to be biased and say only Bahamians should work in the Bahamas, because I have family members who work all over the world. I have a niece who's a director of nursing in Atlanta.
Lashino.
Yes, right here.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I really don't want to belabor this much. I noticed that Zane Lightborn is on. He didn't have anything to say much, and so I don't want to run on.
We were going to bring Zane in as we wrap this segment up.
Yeah, listen to me. I just want to say this to the director. It is good that the union need to agitate for a lot of stuff, but if you want due processes that you talk about, I don't know if we need to agitate for a lot of stuff. I know even when you were in the vineyard with us, you know that as far as labor is concerned and work permits, the unions perhaps ought to have been a part and should be a part of the conversation, but you send any particular vacancies that come through, you would run it through the unions as well as part of the social partners, as the NTC board dictates. Having said that, and I'm going to close by saying this, that you know that unions pretty much, we are also somewhat of a job-seeking agency as well. Not only for our own members, but a lot of persons who call you, I'm sure, and they call me, Quentin, everybody's in the labor movement. They call us and they bring the resumes and stuff, and we shop it around. And when we find that there's an opportunity for such, we would do that, along with the job agency in the country. But having said that, though, going forward, as my brother liked to say, let's reset the button. But going forward, where jobs are not readily available as we go forward, maybe the time now has come that when you have these vacancies coming, these work permits, then you will send them through the various organizations to see and vet them through to make sure we don't have somebody out there behind who can do the work to do it.
Actually, we had even a better plan in mind, Bernard. What we would have done if this wasn't for the COVID, we would start to address the students graduating out of high school going into university and those leaving junior school coming into high school as to the areas in which the most work permits are issued to encourage them to take up those disciplines.
Yeah.
Mr. Pinder, we have a question coming in for you. Do you think more attention needs to be paid to the maritime sector? A lot of persons are available, a lot of young Bahamians are available for these positions, but they believe that they are overlooked, and I'm guessing maybe expats are brought in for these types of positions in the maritime field. Are you able to speak to that at all? Have you been seeing that?
Definitely we need more Bahamians in the maritime field. Let me also say this, and I've said this as John Pinder, not necessarily as the Director of Labor. The Bahamas has tourism as the #1 industry. We don't own not one cruise line. And if you say own a cruise line, the first thing the price I say, government shouldn't get into business. But why we depend on these cruise lines to bring tourists to the Bahamas? You know what they do? I've been on several cruises. They direct you as to where to go when you hit land. Or don't go beyond that point, or don't go beyond this point, or don't go beyond that point. I believe we need more Bahamians to be employed on these cruise lines who can actually guide the people who come off the ship and tell them different stories from what they've been hearing from the people who are directors of these cruise lines and who are the persons who giving them instructions when they leave in the cruise ship. So we need to have more Bahamians on those cruise ships. I believe those cruise ships coming to the Bahamas have at least have 50% Bahamians on them.
And my final question for you, Mr. Pinder, as we wrap up. Mario Curry says, you know, we've talked a lot. Now is the time for action. What do we do now moving forward in this COVID-19 era to ensure that Bahamians are protected? Their jobs are protected.
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what we're trying to do. Again, I go back to the fact that we're still waiting some approval from the government or the Tripartite Council so that we can ensure that if a Bahamian is denied an opportunity for a job for lack of qualifications or lack of the criteria in the advertisement, we want to ensure that when we have if a Bernard Evans is coming to the Bahamas to get a job and he say you have a master's degree in this and that and the other, we need to check the authenticity of that. Let me see if that is in fact the case, because we had situations which prior to me going to the Labor Department, where a person had been to St. Augustine's College. Now, being in the Bahamas, we figure St. Augustine's College, I mean, if you're not in the Bahamas and a Bahamian applied for jobs that have been in St. Augustine's College, you think that's a college, not as a high school. And we had situations where people came and were taking qualifications that we would have recognized as being college, when in fact it was a high school named college. You get my point? Mm-hmm. So if we can if we even go to the point of investigating the qualifications of these people before they get their job, and I believe that will also put a dent in some of this, some of the work permits being issued. Again, I think as parents, we got to encourage our kids to look at these job opportunities that exist in the Bahamas. Engineering is a high-paying job. And what happens for the most part, when Bahamians go to Canada to do engineering or England, they keep them there. They don't come back home because the salaries are so attractive. Mm-hmm. So we got to encourage our kids to come back home so that we don't have the brain drain on our country, to ensure that we have qualified people moving the country forward. And that's another thing we have to do. So encourage these kids to get involved, encourage the children, to get involved in a occupation that will be available in the country when they return, so they get gainful employment. And the next thing is encourage your kids to not look for a job, look for a career. Get something that will make a career, because if you love what you're doing, you can make it a career. I think too often we just try to get our children out of the house, some job, any place, and we like to say government, and because they're looking for job security. But I think if we encourage them to start choosing an occupation that can make a career of it, that also will help to cut down the unemployment rate and cause there to be less for wage being issued.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times we see many Bahamians who come back home with degrees, especially in some of these specialized fields, and they sit home and they can't even make a good enough salary for the monies that they would have spent. And a lot of times when they come home and try to get certain jobs, there's also an issue where they're not paid the same amount as maybe an expat would be paid. But that's a different conversation for another day. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Pinder. We need to get Zane Lightbourne in on the conversation. He's a part of the Teachers Management Union. Zane, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you. Just give us, talk a little bit about challenges that you guys may be facing with the Teachers Management Union at this point as a result of COVID-19.
Well, our first and foremost concern is, when do we get these children back to school so that they can learn? When do we address and give the dates for graduation? And when do we give decisions on exams? All of these are discussions we presently have going on with the minister and his team at education. And we want to have definites that we can put out the public, which I think we agreed to today some, but I'm not presumptuous to name those dates. We look forward to the government doing its part in naming the new dates, since all parties, the Bahamas Union of Teachers and the Bahamas Educators Managerial Union has agreed to certain positions. We're looking forward to that going out in short order, some information that will ease the minds of parents and our managers who are responsible for running schools. Our major concerns as a union is the going back to the workplace and the exposure. For our country, I hear a lot of talk about what we need to do in the future, and it's good to sort out long-term, short-term, medium-term goals. But in the immediate, we need to look at really, this is a health crisis. We're coming off a COVID-19 situation. We have had a lot of talk as a country where I think that we have the opportunity to reset, as someone said, as my good friend Bernard said, to hit the reset button and start over again, start to fix some of these stuff. We're not going back into this level of conversation of who's to blame and what to do in terms of make these long-term adjustments. We can't just talk about it. We have to actually do it. We find that our system has to be digitized. The government have to digitize the public service so that all of our systems tie in together. We are concerned that our devices that the school leaders have to be given to make sure manage, so that we manage the online platforms. We want to make sure that all students are accounted for and all students have access, and someone who they can go to help them manage access to devices. Because simply putting the phones in the hands of a child is not going to help a situation, even if you have an online lecture going on. Children have to be disciplined to pay attention. They have to be guided through the process. Mm-hmm. And I don't see a major fear in the technology part of it threatening workers per se, just threatening how we presently do work, because it's going to require still physical people to work and manage technology. Mm-hmm. And that's what's missing, because we have an online platform where 40,000 children are logged on and 10,000 more of them are from private school and home school. That is the Ministry of Education. We have 60,000 children in the profession. The question my good brother LaRota would have posed, where are these 20,000 plus children? What are they doing now? Mm-hmm. As the texter would have put, we need to get the persons who fall through the cracks. Many times the A students are going to remain A students and high flyers, and they have the background, the parental involvement, which got them there. We need to address the ones who are not being reached. The ones who are 50-50, who could be great, but all they need is the right teamwork, they need the right encouragement, they need parental support. We need to make sure that we find these people, put the systems in place to find them, and then assure that they can work after they come out of school. Because if graduation is going to happen this year real soon, that's a next group of students going to the workplace and looking for a job. Mm-hmm. And we cannot just start there to figure out what's going to happen with them. We have to be able to track our people, and the systems have to tie in. And this idea of work permits, I agree with my brother Kirk. It's inexcusable every year to be talking about work permits, work permits. Let's fix this. Stop giving out 30,000 work permits when we have 30,000 people unemployed. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense. And there's nothing that we say or do other than try to look out for Bahamians first. We'll fix this. Because every country talk about their citizens first. You take care of your citizens, your residents, make sure that your country grows so that we can be self-sufficient, so that we can move to agriculture, we can move to fisheries, we can learn to do our own, provide our own food, and grow our own, get our own resources, produce our own resources, tap into the natural resources. It's been talked for too long. We need work. We need these people immediately to be stimulated. We need teachers are going to have to take a break because they have been working, so they can't work through the summer. They're going to be burnt out. We have people who want to leave the profession now because of frustrations. We need to treat our people better so they want to stay on jobs and give their best. These happy workers produce happy work. We have a productivity council that was recommended by the Tripartite Council. We're trying to find out where that is. What are they doing? We need to be able to measure what we do so we can compete. We can't sit down and complain, oh, we waiting on this and we waiting on that. For what reason? And we have some of the most skilled Bahamians working all over the globe in top positions. So the quality of our education is not a question. How many people are we leaving out of that quality? We are not making it equitable.
Yeah.
We're missing some people. And those are the ones who are contributing to the crime level. Those are the ones who are part of our unemployment. And all of them don't want to do it. Some people are just desperate. This is going to be a time for mental health challenges, and you have to look at those. And I can go on and on about actual responses to COVID, but this is an opportunity to fix these problems. We have the solutions. Let's stop going over the problem, which all of us can identify, and let's address it. Digitize the system. Find out who is in your country. If you're somebody violating the work permit, when you go to the States, you can't even get to the States. You go through right now, the system pulls you in at immigration, and they stamp your passport, and you cannot enter.
Yeah.
That's the same internet. They're using the internet in our country. So we have the availability for the resources to do it. We just need the willpower to do.
Yeah, you have definitely said a mouthful, and I know we have to wrap up soon, but there's something that you would have said that stood out to me when you said A students will continue to be A students, but how do we reach these students who have already probably fallen through the crack? How do you reach them now at this point?
All right, first of all, we do not have a digitized system of education where we can count for every student where they are, which school, which classroom. Everybody have their own systems running, in some cases, different districts, and they can account in their various districts. There need to be a central system. And so once we can identify who these students are, their grading, and we can track them, then we can go after fixing them, addressing the teachers, like my brother Quentin said, from the bottom up. We ask the teachers, how best can you reach these students? Because studies have shown that the competent teacher with parental support is all students need to succeed, or the most they need to succeed. And so what we need to do is find them, then we need to put the system together to make sure, teach these children, give them what they need to be able to bloom wherever their skills are, because all ain't gonna be academic and what we call academic, but they'll be very skilled in certain areas. Once they're able to read, comprehend, math, everything that they're supposed to do in the basics, their skills will take over, they'll bloom, because God gave us, like my brother Bernard said, we're a praying country and we need prayers, but guess what? Word and works. And they are absolutely correct with everything they say, but time for us to do our work, and it's on us to do our part of work, because God left the lines of heaven open for us to pray about it, and he gave us the health and strength. And once we get that wisdom, we'll be able to put it to work, but we can't sit by and just identify problems year after year. When we know how to fix it, we just don't have the will to do it. Put the resources behind it.
Thank you so much, Zane. Interesting thoughts. We really appreciate you, and we thank you for being with us today. Also, Zane, just to let you guys know, over there in education, ZNS is working with several schools to record graduation packages and programs to be aired on ZNS and on Facebook. So if your school is interested in looking at that option, you can call us at 727-1998 for the costing. So that's something to keep in mind. Meantime, Toronto rapper star Serge Ibaka, I hope I said that correctly, has been entertaining fans on social media amidst the NBA coronavirus shutdown. And now the star is hosting a live talent show on Instagram called How Talented Are You? Now, two Grand Bahamians have made it to the final round. Siblings Nakia and Javon Hunt. They're joining us now to talk about tonight's big event. We have a few minutes to wrap up, guys, but just tell us what you need the Bahamian people to do to ensure that you guys are the winners of tonight's event.
Hello, Bahamas. It's interesting that they just emailed us or messaged us and say that their guest celebrity judge could not make it, so they will postpone it for probably a day or two. So for those who want to vote for us, get on Instagram, add both me and Nikki. My account is at Superstar Hunt. I'm naming it and claiming it. And and Nikki is _ Kiki Berry, and also add Serge Ibaka because he's going to be the one going live with the top, the last 6 finalists to win $50,000.
So it's $50,000 that you can win. You're eligible to win. So you go to Search Ibaka on Instagram, and you follow that page?
Yes.
And an announcement, you're not sure when that announcement will be made then?
No, they told us that they will tell us a day in advance. So we will in turn, alert the public to when that is. So that we need the whole Bahamas on, because the winner's country gets $50,000 towards the fight for COVID-19 supplies and stuff. So we don't get it. Our country gets it. So.
Okay, and we have a minute and a half left, and it is a singing competition. So the winners of the singing competition will get $50,000 to assist in the fight against the coronavirus. What song have you sung so far for him? Because I'm sure that to make it to the top 6, you would have had to do probably several rounds, correct?
Yes.
What song?
We sang, they seem to love reggae, like they love the vibe. So we did a number of reggae songs and a gospel song, and now we're just getting our songs together for the final. Yeah.
Are you able to give us a quick sample before you go?
Sure. All right, ready? All right. No woman, no cry. Yeah, no woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. See, no woman, no cry. Say, I remember when we used to sit in the government yard in Trenchtown, over serving the hypocrites as they would mingle with the good people we meet. Good friends we've had, good friends we've lost along the way. In this great future, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say, and no woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. Come out and vote for us, man.
Oh my gosh, that was absolutely amazing. Now, the only thing I could say for you to win is add me to the group, and I assure you we will bring home that $50,000. But awesome job, guys. I think we have a story running tonight, or it may have ran last night, but we'll put the information on our Facebook page, so persons who are tuning in now and trying to get the information, they'll be able to go out and vote. Vote for our people, guys. Don't forget. And that is our show for today. We thank you for joining us. Remember to observe those important practices. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizer, social distance, avoid large gatherings, and stay at home. We will see you again. Today is Thursday, so we will see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow, which is Friday. Until then, stay safe, Bahamas. I'm Shashina Roll-Farkas, and have a great afternoon.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.